in Lahar. I'm the project manager for this risk assessment upgrade project. And I welcome you all. You can move ahead to the next screen. The purpose of the meeting today is to establish the risk assessment work group and introduce you to the project, our vision, and the process that we anticipate. The vision for the project, the overall vision, is that the state of Oregon's risk assessment will provide a strong foundation for strategically allocating natural hazards mitigation resources. So the reason we're doing this project, and have wanted to do this project actually for a very long time, is to enhance the risk assessment that we have now, to meet FEMA's new requirements, and to move forward in the areas of natural hazards mitigation and climate adaptation. The climate change adaptation framework is actually a part of the state's natural hazard mitigation plan. And we want to make sure that climate change is fully integrated into the risk assessment. This is not an update of the risk assessment that we have now. It's an upgrade. It's a whole new project for us. And so with that, I'd like us to, begin introductions. This morning, about half an hour ago, I sent out an email with a list of attachments, and so you should have all the attachments for this in your email. So there's an attachment called Risk Assessment Group, I believe, and so that has the names of everybody who was invited to this. It does not have the names of others who have joined us this morning. So we'll start by going around the room. I think maybe we can just go to a gallery view so we can see everybody.
Stop the share if there's not that much interest at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's better. So now we can see everybody, or at least your names. And I've told you who I am, and I'd like to hand it to Chris.
Yes, good morning. I'm Chris Shirley. I am the Climate Change Resilience Coordinator at DLCD, and I will be helping with risk assessment.
Matt Kroll, Planning Services Division Manager here at Department of Land Conservation Development.
Ashley Edwards, I'm the Planning Grants Coordinator, and I'll be doing a lot of the meeting logistics.
Indispensable. Okay, so I think I'll just start calling people from the top of my screen so that I can keep track of everybody who's here. So the next person I see is John Bauer.
Yes, hi, Natural Hazards Risk Consultant, Portland, Oregon.
And what is your interest in being here today?
Past work in past involvement in natural hazard risk assessments in Washington and state of Oregon.
Okay,
And
thank you. Susan Milhauser.
Hi, good morning. Susan Milhauser. I am also a natural hazards planner at DLCD with a focus on wildfire.
And Nancy Taylor. Okay, we'll come back to you. John Walker.
Yes, I'm just a concerned citizen, own forest ground, interested in what we've got going here. Mapleton,
Okay.
Oregon.
Thank you. Ashley Bowles.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ashley Boltz. I'm part of the emergency management crew here in Deschutes County. And I'm sort of the keeper of our natural hazards mitigation plan, which was updated in 2021. So just looking for more information and how to be more involved in natural hazards. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Rhiannon?
Sorry, couldn't find the unmute there. I'm Rhiannon Bazor. I'm the Coastal Shore Specialist with the DLCD, and I work as part of the Coastal Management Program. And my interest in hazards is that I work in the coastal zone and I work with the local jurisdictions in the coastal zone. And so I really want to be able to help spread some information and education to those constituents too. And I'm in Lincoln City.
Thank you. Michael Rupp?
Let's see. Oh, hello. I'm trying to get my thing working here. I'm a former DLCD staff member and have been working in hazard mitigation since I retired from the department 20 years ago, working on hazard mitigation plans and floodplain management, and certainly have an interest in Oregon's hazard mitigation plan.
Thank you. Jessica?
My name is Jessica Hamner. I am the Community Health and Family Services Manager for the Coqual Indian Tribe, as well as the current Emergency Manager. Here both for the natural hazard mitigation planning and risk assessment part of it, but also to ensure that we're thinking about cultural resources as we do that work.
Thank you. Eric? Ralph?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eric Rao. I'm an emergency response planner with the Oregon Office of State Fire Marshal, and happy to be here today.
Thank you. Kelly James?
Good morning.
Good morning, I'm Kelly James.
I'm getting a bit of back feed. I'm not sure if you're also hearing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Here, come back to me. I'll try to call back in.
Okay. Erica?
Hi, Erica Fleischman. I'm director of the Oregon Climate Change Research Institute and a professor at Oregon State University. We're working with DLCD and others on natural hazard mitigation planning. So I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. Ashley and I already introduced ourselves. Chris Sutton.
Morning, my name is Chris Sutton, the Oregon State Fire Marshal. I lead the Community Risk Reduction Unit, and our unit does quite a bit of work with community wildfire protection plans. And I know your office is looking to integrate those into the AHMP. So I'm just here for situational awareness. Thanks.
Thank you. Curtis?
Good morning. My name is Curtis Peets. I'm with the Oregon Department of Emergency Management, and I serve as their response planner. So I help to maintain the state's emergency operations plan. So looking forward to participating and integrating the work into our plan.
Thank you. Christy Shaw?
Good morning, I'm Christy Shaw. I'm the National Fire Plan Coordinator for the Oregon Department of Forestry. I work closely with the counties and our staff for community wildfire protection plans. And the focus of my job is wildfire hazard mitigation. Good morning.
Thank you. Bill Burns?
Good morning, all. I'm Bill Burns. I'm an engineering geologist at Dogami, and here just representing Dogami to figure out if and how we could be involved.
Thank you. Claudia Rice?
Hello, good morning. I'm a postdoc scholar at Oregon State University, and I'm here to understand how the civil engineering department of the university can contribute and get involved in enhancing the risk mitigation strategies for the Oregon State. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Wei?
Hi, I'm Hui Radomski. I'm the South Coast Regional Rep. Oh, sorry, my thing is blocked. Here it goes. Okay, Hui Radomski, South Coast Regional Representative with DLCD. Just here to learn. Thank you.
Emma?
Good morning. Oh, sorry for the light. Okay, let's try to do that. I'm Emily and I use she, her pronouns. I'm a former DLCD employee, but I am now the land use and health policy strategist at OHA. So I'm looking forward to participating. I'm on the climate and health team in the environmental public health section. So just kind of bringing that perspective to this process.
Thank you. Mike B?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Badsmarowski. I am the soil health specialist at the Oregon Department of Agriculture, and like many others, just kind of here to learn about the process and where the state bodies could maybe intersect with each other.
Eric Main?
Good morning. I'm Eric Main. I'm the Environmental Justice Mapping Lead at the Oregon Health Authority Public Health Division.
Monty Bryan?
Morning, I'm Monty Bryan. I'm the Emergency Management Director with Cow Creek Band Umpqua Tribe of Indians. I'm here to make sure that we are able to give our input and anything I can contribute as well. And we're also doing our hazard mitigation plan update this year. So this will be a good refresher and learning experience for me. Thank you.
I'm gonna circle back to Nancy Taylor.
Hi, Nancy Taylor here, and I'm the Waterway and Habitat Incentives Coordinator. I'd like to be available if you guys need us for providing input on the natural resources, the wetlands, et cetera, the fisheries, et cetera, in this process.
Great, thank you. Kelly James, are you back on?
Yeah, hopefully this is better. Can you hear me?
Much better.
Great. Sorry about that. I'm Kelly James. I'm with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Portland District. I'm a planner and public involvement specialist, and I work really closely with Paul Sclafani, our Silver Jackets lead. For those unfamiliar, Silver Jackets is a collaborative group of state, federal, local agencies and tribes that work together to address flood risk specifically and other hazards.
Thank you. William Bagley?
Hello, good morning. Name is William Bagley. I am the Tribal Emergency Manager for the Klamath Tribe.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. Mara Kelly?
Good morning, I'm Mara. I'm the continuity coordinator for the Oregon Judicial Branch. I help all of the courts write their continuity plans, and so hopefully adding a bit of mitigation as well for hazards. Thank you.
Great, and Matt McRae?
Good morning, Matt McRae with Lane County. I work as the disaster recovery manager focused on recovery from the Holiday Farm fire. I'm also supporting our natural hazards mitigation planning team we're in the process of updating our NHMP. So just eager to learn more about the state's process for risk assessment and support however I can. Thanks.
Thank you. Felicia?
Hello, Felicia Meta-Schultz. I'm the Coastal Hazard Specialist with Oregon State University Extension Service and Oregon Sea Grant. And I'm working with partners and communities to increase communities along the Oregon coast to increase their resilience to coastal hazards. Thank you.
Ethan?
Hi, I'm Ethan Sheridan, the Director of the Population Research Center at Portland State. We produce population estimates, we produce population forecasts, and general expertise working with census data, including indicators of vulnerability or resilience to natural hazard risk exposure.
Thank you. And Christopher?
Hi, I'm Chris Farrar. I'm Chair of the Clatsop County Planning Commission, and I'm just here this morning to learn from all of you more about risk assessments and what resources are available. We've been revising our comprehensive plan here in the county, a process that's dragged on for like 3 years. And of course, hazards is part of that planning process. So I appreciate all you being here.
Thank you. And Jared?
Jared Hall, Climate Tribe's Planning Department.
Thank you. And Deanna Wright?
Morning, I'm Deanna. I'm Oregon's NFIP Floodplain Coordinator.
Okay, and is there anybody that we've missed? Okay, then we can move on to the next item on the agenda. Maybe, go ahead. Sorry. Okay. All right, that's okay. Maybe we should just grab the scope. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the scope of work again. That should be in the numerous attachments to the email I sent you this morning. Yes, please. Sorry, it's okay. So, okay, so we have a very complex, in a way, scope of work. We have two main deliverables. One is a full risk assessment upgrade, and the second is an improved risk assessment for use in the 2025 Oregon Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan, which will be updated later this year. And so along the way, we're going to do both things. What we'd like to do, our vision, as I mentioned earlier, is to have a risk assessment model that provides a strong foundation for strategically allocating natural hazards mitigation resources. And so there are several outcomes we're envisioning with respect to that. One is that we meet or exceed FEMA's requirements. Another, and you can see them in the 3 columns across the top there, that we apply an equity lens so that we make sure that we account for disparities between communities, especially socially vulnerable populations and underserved communities. And that we find ways and techniques to express social vulnerability meaningfully and consistently statewide. We want to make sure that the risk assessment upgrade is scientifically defensible. We'd like it to be scalable so it can be used statewide, region-wide, county-wide, or at the city level. That it will allow weighting of factors and indexing. And that we'd like this time to make sure that climate change is integrated into the hazard characterization, particularly the probability analysis for each hazard, each climate change applicable hazard. And instead of just commenting on it the way that we have in the past. And we also want to address a wide array of vulnerabilities. And we want to make sure that this risk assessment is accessible and usable by the tribes and the local governments, so that will facilitate not just the state, but also the tribes and the local governments doing their own risk assessments.
And this is Chris. I'm going to add that another vision that we have is to put it into a GIS environment, which is fully accessible to tribes, local governments, and others. Right now, our risk assessment is not in a public viewable GIS environment.
So if you scroll down just a little bit to the next table. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so what we've done here is taken the FEMA risk assessment requirements, including new requirements that came out last year and will be effective next month. So they will apply to us. And so on the left-hand side, the FEMA risk requirements are essentially, we have to characterize and characterize all the natural hazards in the state. And I've listed them there. We have 12. We have to analyze the probability of hazard events into the future, considering climate change. We have to analyze the vulnerability of state assets. And that includes state buildings, owned or operated, state-owned or operated buildings, state critical facilities, infrastructure, lifelines, natural and cultural resources. And not only do we need to determine what is vulnerable to which hazards, but how vulnerable they are and how much potential dollar loss would there be to each of those facilities from each hazard. And then we need to do a similar thing with local jurisdictions. We need to analyze the vulnerable jurisdictions based on both state and local risk assessments. So we need to determine which jurisdictions are most threatened by which hazards and which jurisdictions are most vulnerable to damage and loss from the impacts to their assets, including populations, socially vulnerable and underserved communities in particular, and structures, including critical facilities, infrastructure, and community lifelines again. And also the potential dollar loss to vulnerable structures. And that has to be based on estimates, both at the state and local risk assessment levels. And we also need to address risks from high hazard potential dams, which are those that have the potential to take a human life if they are to fail. And can you scroll down a little bit there? There's a little more. We also need to look at what FEMA refers to as changes in development, which is a very wide category. And it includes all of these things that you see below: changes in land use in the built environment, changes in projected future growth, changes in population demographics, particularly where populations are growing in hazard areas, and that includes socially vulnerable populations and underserved communities, and changes to the vulnerability of state assets, and changes in development that could threaten the jurisdictions most vulnerable to hazards, to various hazards, all the hazards. So that's a lot. And so we've tried to break it down to the right a little bit, so you can like scroll there and over. Oops, there you go. Okay, so we've taken all of that and started to identify the elements that we'll need to build into the risk assessment. One is the natural hazard areas, the locations of cities and unincorporated areas, locations of buildings, critical facilities, lifelines, infrastructure, historic and cultural resources, noting that there are some historic and cultural resources that are confidential. Their locations are confidential. We will not report those. You can read right along with me. Socially vulnerable populations, underserved communities, all the things we just talked about, critical facilities, both state and locally owned or operated, privately owned or operated, and other cultural resources. Then to identify what lifelines are, critical facilities are those facilities that need to continue to be operational both during and after a disaster. And lifelines very often overlap with critical facilities, but there are also systems and networks that provide services during and after disasters. So law enforcement and fire services, both first responders, government services, food, for example, warehousing and distribution centers, water, shelter, agriculture, transportation, lifelines like roads and bridges and airports and water ports, hospitals and clinics, electricity, fuel, communications infrastructure like cell towers, the internet, ham radio, emergency operations center communications, and emergency operations centers altogether. And I think that's everything. And then state and local critical facilities that we have addressed in the past include airports, communications, fire stations, hospitals and health clinics, military facilities, police stations, schools, detention centers, emergency operations, and miscellaneous facilities. So those are all the things we're required to do. And here are some of the things that we would like to do based on our vision. Do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, so these are things that are in addition to FEMA requirements that we would like, that we've brainstormed. And one of our intentions over the next several weeks with you is to expand on this list to find out what is important for your planning and interests. But some of the things that we thought about were the location of childcare facilities, retirement enclaves, villages, facilities, mobile home parks, hardware stores, which are needed for recovery, access to internet and cell phones, some public health data, where we've done mitigation in the past, fuel distribution, storage and sale. Those are just examples of things that go a little beyond what FEMA requires. This is a work in progress, this list here. The one on top, bonding, bridging, and linking, is a way of describing a community's social dynamics. And that is useful for helping us understand how to best communicate with communities pre and post event. So anything to add there?
Any questions?
Yeah, any questions?
Or is everybody just holding their breath?
Sure. This is John Bauer. Is there anything about levees and their failures? That
Oh, that's a good one.
Especially in high-risk areas.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, no. We could add it. I don't know what kind of. I don't know what kind of data we have.
We have okay data from Dogami.
Okay,
and levies.
And I don't know that OWRD actually has the capacity to do that, with the funding to do that, but we can certainly look into it.
Yeah, rather timely given California's situation.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's very important, but it's been one of those places that we've been weak in. Thank you. Anybody else have comments? Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak.
Yeah, this is, oh, go ahead.
Oh, this is Michael Rupp. Do you want us to make suggestions of things to add to your list?
Sure.
Okay, because I could probably email you a few things that I wouldn't mind seeing on the list.
That would be awesome.
Okay, great.
Yeah, this is Eric Mann at Oregon Health Authority. Could you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by hospitalizations?
Yeah, just the rate or the not rate. What's the word I'm looking for? The number of. Actually, what I really mean by that is the ability to access medical facilities.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Yeah, that could be confused with like the number of people within a community that were hospitalized over the past year or you know, for whatever health condition. So yeah, I appreciate the clarity.
Right. So we should make that more clear. We could use the rate of hospitalization as well. I don't know, but really what I meant there was access to medical facilities.
If there's a way to identify hospitalizations based on things like extreme heat exposure or, you know, other things that can be tied directly to a natural hazard, that would be useful.
Yeah, there are, you know, just the data is going to be, you know, prone to some suppression issues, particularly for like heat related illnesses. So, you know, the data might be available at the county level or might be available at 5-year aggregations, but may not be available like down to a census tract or other community set boundary.
Right, and that's one of the issues that we're going to have with this whole project is figuring out what data we can use and at what level and how do we get consistent results across the state.
Yeah, happy to help you out with that.
Perfect, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Suggestions?
Hi, Claudia again. I just want to ask if you are planning to consider the interaction between the natural hazards. For instance, for the tsunami, you have the generation really close to the shore. So in the first place, you will have the seismic activity and then the hydraulic effects of the tsunami. And the cascading effect, the cumulative effect of both is becoming more trendy and more is getting studied. And I didn't see any reference to this effect. So just to clarify if you are considering this or not.
Writing it down. It's something that hasn't been done in the past, but it's worth looking into. Thank you.
Okay. Glad to help if I can help in somehow.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
This is Bill Burns over at Dogami. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we've done a lot of that tsunami analysis and earthquake analysis using hazards for almost the whole coast. So we have all that data, just by the way.
Okay, Eric?
Yeah, hey, good morning. This is Eric Rao from Oregon Office of State Fire Marshal. So I think it's a point that speaks to both the health system issues that we were talking about earlier and also the some of this other stuff is that Marion, you alluded to the desire to be consistent across hazards. And I think that the level of specificity in some of those hazards is going to be challenging, or make that challenging rather, in as much as we have a lot more data and a lot more specificity for some of them than we do for others. And so you're not new to this. I know most of us are not new to this. And so the person who just spoke about tsunami hazards and cascading events is bringing up a good point as well, that there's a lot of data available that we need to get to, but pooling that data and coming up with consistent definitions, I appreciate the way you've laid out the project in that sense. So let's spend a lot of time defining the problem before we race ahead to anticipate some of those issues. I like the structure. I'm not implying that there's anything lacking there. I think that's exactly what we want to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Deanna?
Hi, this is Deanna, NFIP coordinator for Oregon. Previous comment about the levies. Happy to help Marion on that from the NFIP perspective. The National Levy Database is the authoritative resource to locate the levies in Oregon, and there's generally 3 types of levies. They're federally government, they could be a local sponsor, or they could be like agricultural based levies. Some of these levies aren't going to be mapped in the National Flood Insurance Program level, but the database will include like a risk assessment of the levies if they're accredited. So again, some levies will be accredited, some won't. The levies that aren't accredited, they're not going to provide flood protection for the general public. So if that's something that we want to add as a subtopic for the risk assessment, Marion, happy to help on that.
Okay.
But there is an existing database. I was going to try to push it into the chat, but I don't know if it's enabled, the link.
No, it's not.
Okay.
Because we want us to talk to each other.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thanks. Mara?
Good morning. I'm somewhat new to this, so perhaps this is in here somewhere, but curious about transit or trains, buses, taxis, if that's an Oregon initiative, or maybe it's already in the FEMA requirements buried somewhere. Thank you.
I think I may not have written all of that down, but yes, rail is in there.
Oh.
And what were the 3 things? Transit, transit and taxis.
Yeah.
I don't know about transit. Most of the state does not have transit. So that would be limited really to those areas that do. So that's something we can consider whether we want to do or not. Okay. Eric?
Yeah, I'd just like to let you guys know that we geocode driver's license data for one of our health indicators. And we have about 99.5% of those geocoded. I don't know that anybody at ODOT is geocoding that data. So if you guys are like looking for accounts, we can help you out there too.
That's great.
Okay, Ethan.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. So I know there is a bill, I think, for someone from Dogami, and I was wondering whether building footprints were on there. That was a Dogami project under the framework, just special framework. I'm wondering if regular updates are a part of that, and if that's something I didn't see that in the document.
Yes, if it's not there, it definitely will be used. But I don't know about regular updates. Maybe Bill can answer that.
Hey, can you hear me? Bill Burns?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Yeah, we do updates. In fact, we just did a recent update of our building footprints database that was released. So we should use the latest, greatest. But each time we do a risk assessment around the state, we generally do upgrades to those building footprints. And so we're kind of continuously doing them, I guess, is the answer. So I can help, though, make sure that this group is using the latest, greatest one we have. Levy inventory that we did, we continue to update those as well with each kind of hazard assessment that we do. So I can help with that data as well.
Great. Okay, anybody else? Thoughts, questions, comments, ideas? Okay, is there anything, oh, Nancy, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Do you guys end up mapping a layer of wetlands for flood control?
We could.
I didn't get that. Did we map what?
Wetlands.
Do you add a layer of wetlands to show flood control?
We haven't.
I think you should.
Yes.
That's great. I agree. Okay. Mike, do you want to still email us, or would you like to share your thoughts with us now?
Yeah, I don't have my full list that I would do, but I'm basing some of this off of my perception of what might happen with a Cascadia event being probably the largest disaster we would experience. I was thinking along the lines of drug supply lines and things that are maybe a little bit more obscure, but in an event like a Cascadia event, I think medical, getting supplies, kidney dialysis. I mean, we've got a whole population out there that I think functions normally now, but under extreme conditions would be pretty desperate. So, and that's the thing that was off the top of my head, but there might be others too. So I thought of maybe going through information that I've uncovered and just send you a list if I find other things that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So now that we've gone through this process and thought a little bit about the scope of work, can you think of others who are not here, who or not on the email list if you've looked, who might be invited or could help us out?
Can I just start speaking?
Yes, you can.
I'm not sure about revenue or the treasury. I'm sure that they have impacts or are related, secondarily to a lot of these categories. The other might be waste treatment and water treatment. Thank you.
Thank you.
School districts would be another Department of Ed.
I don't know if this is Mike again. I don't know if you've contacted Jay Wilson from Clackamas County. And whether he has time.
I probably should.
I don't know. Jay would be excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark D'Arienzo also.
Okay, I don't know Mark.
Chris knows Mark pretty well.
Yep.
I think, so.
Okay, Mark with a K.
Yes.
D'Arienzo. Okay.
And then Portland State has a new emergency management resilience program they just started. I think they might be interested in participating.
Okay.
I can give you a name of somebody if you need to contact them.
Oh, I think we have some names. Thank you.
Okay, good.
But send your name anyway.
Yes. Eric, you have something to add?
Yeah, I was going to second the suggestion about somebody from Drinking Water Services. We're currently working with them to build out public water system boundaries. Might also make it on the list.
Okay.
Public water system boundaries.
Okay. Anyone else?
I have one more. CERT or some of our volunteers or ROADs. I don't know if that's also a specific area, but those volunteer groups are that may impact the availability of some of these elements.
Okay. They may have good information to share. Don't necessarily have it at state level.
I think CERT was on your list.
Yes. It was on my list.
Okay.
I might ask Matt, is OSPAC represented? Are you the representative for OSPAC, Matt, or should somebody?
Sure. I mean, OSPAC is a great group. I'm with them. And as far as, the fundamental data on seismic, that's readily available. OSPAC does not have access, I don't think, to data about earthquakes that's not generally available.
Yeah, and there are a couple of people on our list that attend OSPAC meetings. Nat, they read. Not sure who else. Okay, anybody else? All right, so we'll look into those and expand this group. And if you have any other thoughts, please email us. So we'll move on to the project schedule. Okay, I got it. All right. So this is also a little bit complicated. We got the grant award for this project in the middle of November, and we spent the last few months kind of gearing up for this. And so today we're in March. That's the outline in red. We are here. This is where we are in the middle of March. And the first of our twice a month meetings, we anticipate that we'll meet twice a month for several meetings just to get through all of this discussion about, to scope exactly what's going to go into the risk assessment, what the data we're going to use are, what level of data we can get for what, which hazards have the data, which hazards may not have the data, and how we'll deal with that. All of these things that we're going to be discussing. And so we're looking at about maybe 3 or 4 meetings for that. We'll see how long that takes. And we anticipate, that everybody will come to these meetings as much as you can. We'll send out doodle polls for the meetings and see how many folks we can get to each one, because we'd like as many people as can to be involved in those conversations. And once we've determined the elements, the data, the methods, then we can start actually working on developing the model. And during that time too, we're going to need some input from people with expertise in various areas. So in some of the documents you have today, we've referred to like a group that would be working on actually doing the work of developing the model, and then subgroups that would represent different constituencies and different areas of expertise. And so it may be that not everybody needs to come to all these meetings twice a month. We'll call out who we need to come to which meeting. So there may be some meetings between now and the end of the year where we'll need everybody again, and but mostly we're anticipating that the remainder of the meetings will be smaller group meetings. We're also open to individual contacts during that time, so please feel free to reach out to us or by email or call us or whatever works for you. So we'll begin to develop the model. At some point, we will be able to begin the 2025 update of the Oregon Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. We don't know quite when that will be. This is showing it. This is in the striped area. This is showing it maybe starting in June. We really just don't know, and we'll have to deal with whatever timeline we have. And during that time, then we will focus on developing a risk assessment that at that point obviously will not be the full upgraded risk assessment, but it will be a significant improvement to the risk assessment that we have now. And so we'll kind of transition to that a little bit at the same time as we're trying to keep the full risk assessment update going. What we do know is that that will need to be done by January of 2024 in order for there to be enough time to use the results of the risk assessment in the state plan update. And also, while we're developing both of these risk assessments, we will need to share where we're going and where we've been with the public, and post the draft report for comments and review, and then address those comments. And we're going to need your help probably to address some of those comments. So that's the part of this process that is in the striped zone. And then we'll transition back into focusing on the full risk assessment upgrade. You can slide to the right. Thanks. And at some point during that period, we need to make sure that we can adjust the risk assessment upgrade so that it's accessible for tribes and local governments to use. We're anticipating bringing in some folks from the tribes and the local governments who would be using it to beta test it and help us find the bugs and make sure that it's accessible for them. And then finalize the model and do the draft report, the public review, and finish everything up there by January of 2025, the end of January. There is a possibility that we could get up to a year extension if we need to. Pardon?
William, Bill Burns.
Oh, okay, Bill.
Hey, Marion, I'm just getting a little confused. So summarize the schedule. It sounds like this year, 2023, we are going to do this project. And then at some point, you're going to phase into a different project, which is the plan update. Is that right? Am I getting this right?
They're two separate processes, two separate projects, but they do kind of overlap.
Okay.
So what we're trying to,
we end in January 2024. Is that right?
this project, the risk assessment upgrade, the full thing, we end in January of 2025. And in between, we're going to take a little detour and work on a risk assessment for the state plan and then come back to this.
Okay. 2-year project. Enhance the risk assessment.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I know it's confusing.
So this is Chris. I think one of our intentions will be to assemble as much information as we can in a non-public facing GIS system to be used in the natural hazard mitigation plan update period. And then we will start working on refining the GIS environment so that it's usable for everyone else. If that helps explain the phasing.
Any other comments or questions? No? Okay. Well, then we'll move along. Okay. And you all have copies of these documents in your email. And if you didn't get the email from me this morning, please let me know because I may not have had all of your names. Okay, so the next one is, the PDF. Okay, we got it there. Yeah, right. It's coming. Sorry for the delay. Okay, here we go. All right, so can everybody see that? Or see your own version? Okay, well, let us know if you can.
Yeah, it's coming.
Okay, very good. Okay, so again, we have, this is our draft declaration of collaboration, generally known as a charge and charter. But we wanted to emphasize the fact that we really need to collaborate on this project in order to achieve the goals. So the charge is really our statement of goals. We've talked about the vision, a strong foundation for strategically allocating natural hazards mitigation resources. And we've talked about the charge, but we haven't stated it this succinctly. It's to develop and implement a public-facing comprehensive risk assessment tool in a geospatial environment that will respond to FEMA's new requirements for incorporating climate adaptation, social vulnerability, lifelines, and equity. Those items listed are basically the newest pieces that are required by FEMA. Incorporate additional elements and information that enhance the tool to further Oregon's natural hazards mitigation and climate adaptation aspirations. Those are some of the extra things that Chris was talking about. Design the tool in a way that's useful not only for the state, but also for the federally recognized Native American tribes, cities, counties, special districts, and others for natural hazards mitigation planning, and complete the project by January 31st, 2025, unless we decide that we need an extension. Okay, can you scroll down? Okay, so some of the deliverables we've also talked about, we want to meet or exceed FEMA requirements. We want to apply an equity lens. We want to employ data analysis techniques that can express social vulnerability meaningfully and consistently statewide to the best of our ability. We want it to be scientifically defensible. We want it to incorporate climate change as an integral part of the hazard characterization, particularly probability. We want it to be scalable. We want it to allow weighting of inputs or factors and indexing. We want it to be usable by tribes and local governments. And we want to address the wide array of vulnerabilities that we discussed. And the other deliverable is the risk assessment for the natural hazard mitigation plan along the way. So can you scroll down to page 2? Okay, so this is our project management team. Our project sponsors are both DLCD and OEM managers. And our project director is Matt Kroll right here in the room with us. I'm the project manager, and Chris Shirley and Joseph Murray from OEM are our project management associates. For lack of a better word, we're all working together and helping each other. And Ashley, that you met, is our grants manager, and she's also providing administrative support for us. And a couple of people who aren't here this morning, I think, are Sadie Carney and Christine Crabb, who are both public information specialists who are going to help us with designing and implementing a communications and engagement plan for including the public in what we do, and having a good, healthy review of our 2 reports. This part is about you. And what you will be helping us do is to fulfill the charge and produce the risk assessment upgrade by January 31st, 2025. And we need you all to bring your knowledge, lived experience, resources, and expertise to the project and to work collaboratively. The next paragraph is a little bit of background about what our hazards are and what we will be including, which we've already talked about. And at the top of the next page, we'd like for the work group members to have expertise in at least one of the areas that we include in the risk assessment so that we can do this very efficiently and effectively. And the fourth paragraph talks about how we're going to do this, which we've also discussed, that there will be a group working on the risk assessment itself, and then all the subgroups who will be providing the information that will populate the risk assessment and give us perspectives that will help us decide what inputs to use and how to interpret the results. And then we talk about the report and that the work group members throughout this project will assist OEM and DLCD staff with addressing the comments received and will advise us throughout the project. Okay, questions at this point? Okay, so the next part is about the meetings twice a month. And right now, we're looking at generally the second and fourth weeks of the month. And then fewer meetings for the second year and full work group meetings as necessary. And again, completing the project by January 31, 2025. So the flow chart you see is just another way of visualizing the project schedule. So the first thing we're going to do is make our initial determinations and then begin developing the full risk assessment model. And then at some point, we're going to take our little detour into developing the risk assessment for the Oregon NHMP and the report that goes with it and the public review of that. And then come back to focusing on continuing to develop the full risk assessment model, adjust it for use of others besides the state, and again, do the report and public review, and then we're done. And these are some draft agreements about how we will do the work and work together. This whole document is a draft, as you can see in bright red letters, and it's for discussion. We just want to introduce it to you today. We want you to take it with you, read it, consider it, talk to your agencies or organizations about it, and then come back to the next meeting in 2 weeks with some ideas and suggestions that we can work through and make this work for everybody. So I don't know that I really need to read all of these things. They're pretty typical of highly performing work groups. And I think I'm going to ask Chris to talk about another piece we'd like you to consider.
Right, so this declaration of, what we call it, cooperation or collaboration is based on a model used by Oregon Solutions. And one of the things that Oregon Solutions does is ask each of the participating work group organizations to specify what they will commit to do on what schedule, and then actually sign a part of the declaration to solidify that, to so that each agency is making a commitment to a certain scope of work. So if you're not familiar with the Oregon Solutions declaration process, you might want to look at their website and take a peek. But the idea is that because this is this project will go on for a couple of years, we want to make sure that we understand what each agency or community-based organization that decides to be part of the work group will commit to the project.
And if any of the tribes would like to do this, you're welcome to. So we just like you to think about this, take it back to your leadership, talk about it, and come back with some thoughts and suggestions for the next meeting. Oh, John Bauer, go ahead.
Yeah, I probably should have asked this earlier here. So FEMA has imposed these new requirements as 2023. Are there other states, of course, other states, natural hazard mitigation plan updates will have the similar, requirements. Are there any other models that have led the way, or is Oregon going to be leading the way here, at least in the western states? And by that, I'm suggesting leveraging ideas that others have already explored for their own states.
So I don't have a definitive answer to that, but I'll kind of talk out loud about what I'm thinking. FEMA rolled out these new requirements last April and made them effective this April. And there were no allowances for states that were closing in on finishing up their plans, but would not be FEMA approved by April. And they needed to do this. So I think the first ones out of the chute were going to have done it very quickly. To make sure that their plans didn't expire and could still still had to meet those requirements. So I don't know how many of those are out there, but I could find out and see what we can learn from them.
That is certainly part of our process, is to look at what other states are doing. And there are also pieces, particularly around the equity and social vulnerability, that are being worked on independent of natural hazard mitigation planning. And we are deeply engaged in looking at those tools and processes.
Bill?
Hello. So my question is about kind of time commitment. So with the schedule, you kind of had meet twice a month, and that was great. That really helps us figure out time commitment. But with this commitment document idea, do you have an estimate of how much time we would be committing over these 2 years to go along with that?
Though that would be negotiated, I think, with each group. So it will be different for everyone.
So
and at some point, we're going to do that internal discussion, I guess, or
If as a group we determine that we want to do those commitment letters, I guess I'll call them, for lack of a better word, then yes. And hopefully we'll come to some agreement about that next meeting.
okay, like maybe I just need basic questions. Will there be funding along with that? Is that the idea? Or is this funding that our department should be expected to cover? And if it is, again, I just need some kind of estimate of what that time might be over a 2-year commitment.
Okay, I'll give you a call this afternoon, Bill, and we can talk about it.
Great, sounds good, thank you.
But in general, most of the agreement commitments will be based on existing resources that you have within your own departments. But in some cases, we will be doing some contract. So it really depends on the level of expertise, or the degree, level of expertise you can bring to the project. And
John, you had your hand up. Do you still want to speak?
No.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, so we're actually a little bit ahead of time. We have a question for you. And that is, having heard all of this now, having some introduction to the project and what we'd like to produce, what do you think would be your definition of success in this project? How would you see us being successful? Just unmute yourself and speak when you're ready. So for Nancy, maybe success would be integrating natural resources in a much more deeply than we have before.
Hey, this is Eric Rao from Oregon OSFM. If I can just chime in for a second, I think that continuing the work beyond the minimum requirements would be my definition of success. I've worked on a couple of these efforts before, some of them with you, Marion, Chris, Matt, lots of other folks on the call. Good work always comes out. We always meet the minimum requirements, but then sometimes we set it down because that's what it was designed to do. And I appreciate that you included the sort of, I don't know, Kickstarter calls it the stretch goal or whatever, right? Of going beyond that and developing something that we can put to work for this. And I think that would be a good definition of success. A lot of my colleagues on here probably have other of their own definitions, but that would be mine, that this group continues to work together and continues to develop products that people use.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yeah.
You're muted.
All right, wrong one. So for me, success would be to expand our knowledge of the impact of, for me specifically, geologic hazards. There's a lot of holes in our understanding across the state in exactly what we can expect to have and how to develop scenarios so that we can start to plan against those scenarios. So we've done a lot of work, but there's still gaping holes in our knowledge, specifically around crustal faults, especially in Eastern Oregon, impacts of volcano hazards, both, lahars, pyroclastic flows, and ashfall. So there's still a lot of things that we need to know, and I'm really hoping that this effort will help us sort of achieve some of those hole filling in our knowledge.
Great.
Hey, this is Bill. I guess my mind goes to the action items, like being able to start to develop action items, which some of them will be gaps in the risk analysis, stuff that we don't understand at this point, or stuff that needs advancement, like Althea was talking about. So to me, success is getting the risk assessment done well enough that we can really identify some great action items for future success.
That's a great point, Bill. Because when the natural hazard mitigation plan is updated, mitigation actions will need to be tied to the results of the risk assessment. So yeah, there will be a different process, I think, for doing mitigation actions than we've used in the past.
Miriam, this is Althea again. How are we going to address areas where we have a need for mitigative action and to have those actions reflected in the plan and our unassailable gaps that we might have in knowledge of loss estimation and the risk?
That's a good question too, Althea, and I don't have a pat answer for you. I think that's something we're gonna need to figure out. I don't mean to just, you know, not answer, but I don't have a good answer.
Perhaps the mitigative action there would be to find funding to fill those gaps.
Precisely.
Yeah. But exactly how we fill those gaps in the risk assessment is another question too. I think that we'll all be discussing. Yeah, thank you, Chris. Chris?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know you were calling on me.
Okay.
I have some background in volcanic hazards, and I live in the Astoria area where landslides and will be a big outcome from any Cascadia type event or even a smaller event, and all the disruption that causes. We also have a land use pattern here that is about 85% forest. And so most of the development in the county is along the Columbia River border and the Pacific Ocean. So there's a lot of hazard potential here. And being on the Planning Commission, I've been frustrated often by our local government and their reluctance to implement logical land use planning and mitigation of the potential impact from some of these events. It's the public in general looks at preparing for these disasters as a restriction on what they can do. And so my vision of success for this work group would be if somehow you can put together a document, plan, model, everything else that goes with it, that somehow motivates local governments to actually put this stuff into action, because they shelve it, they table it, they obfuscate, they do anything to avoid, because they have to take a stand that part of the public is strongly against, because it'll restrict their use of land. And it's a big disaster waiting to happen. And when it does, everybody will shake their head, but it'll be too late. So I know you can do good work and do a good plan and everything, but how do you make it where the people that need to take it seriously will take it seriously and start to do something, start to change their mindset around this? So that's my soapbox speech for the morning. Sorry.
That's great. That's one of the reasons why we think it's important to put the risk assessment out there for the public to be able to look at and play with in a GIS environment, so that they can begin to explore the hazards not only in their area, but in other areas of the state, and get a better understanding of the issues.
Thank you. Anybody else have a definition of success or an idea of what they'd like to get out of this project? Okay, well, seeing that, we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is preparing for our next meeting. And again, I'll say that we'll send out a doodle poll for the next meeting. We're looking at the week of March 27th. That's the fourth week of March. And then again in the second week of April and the fourth week in April. So maybe we'll send out a slew of doodle polls and get these things on your calendars more than 2 weeks in advance.
Yes.
So be looking for that. Do you want to go to the next document?
Is that the homework document?
Oh, no, actually, pull up the presentation, please. There we go, and just. Oh, share. Just scroll down. Next meeting preparation. All right. Next slide. Thanks. All right, here we are.
Okay, so in preparation for our next meetings, we put together a few resources for you to become familiar with. You emailed these out, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
These should all be in your email.
Okay, so we have an introduction to the existing natural hazard mitigation plan risk assessment. And in that introduction, you will see some areas that we have already identified as weak spots. But in addition, we talked about a few more today. We put in a copy of the guidance from FEMA that addresses the new risk assessment requirements. It's an excerpt from the larger guidance. So that's there for you to look at and get more information about FEMA's new requirements.
That's the source document for the left-hand column of the FEMA requirements on the scope of work document.
Right, and then about 10 years ago, we worked with University of Oregon on scoping a new risk assessment model. We have included that in the materials to look over. A lot's changed since then. We don't expect to do that exact model, but it might provide some food for thought as we think about how we are going to craft our new model. And then finally, FEMA did a project called the National Risk Index, and there is a GIS environment associated with that. We don't want to replicate that per se, but there might be some information or techniques in there that we find useful for our own risk assessment, or that we just import directly. So we provided a 2-page description of the National Risk Index and a link to the mapping environment.
So the second and fourth documents on there are very short, 2 to 3 pages. The introduction to the risk assessment and the new model from 2013 are the longer pieces.
Right, so in addition to these background reading materials, we also want to remind you to take a look at that declaration of
That's the next slide.
collaboration. Okay. And think about how the information that's in there, the scope of work, the project schedule, but also think about how your agency or organization can contribute to the project and whether the individual scopes of work idea is workable in this situation, as reflected in the Oregon Solutions declarations.
Also, you might think about, as we do this project, turn it around and think about how this might help your organization in the work that you do. I also wanted to mention that if you are interested in the National Risk Index, there's more to dig through. If you really want to plow into it, is the link on that fact sheet?
I don't know. So if you go to the National Risk Index webpage, which is linked on the 2-pager, you'll see a technical document that's much longer. So you can really dig into the procedures and the algorithm that FEMA used for the National Risk Index. And later on, we might want to talk about some of the weaknesses and strengths that have been identified with that National Risk Index. But it would be helpful to become familiar with it.
Any questions or concerns about that? John Bauer?
Yeah, I do want to mention the National Risk Index. They're going to be having some webinars this week. They plan to update using the Census 2020 data. So yes, if you look at it, it's all using older data, but there's plans to update it if you want. It's just look it up for the webinar this week and in another week too. So it's March 15th and March 20th.
Thank you. We'll make sure that's transmitted to everyone.
So is there anybody here who, this is the next slide. We want to give others who have been here just for interest or found out about this through our Gov Delivery email and want to participate. Is there anybody who would like to comment who hasn't yet?
Yes, I'm John Walker from Mapleton. I'm just listening to see what we got to do to stay in business. You guys are putting a small business right out of business. We got quite a bit of forest ground that this private accord bill is going to just about put us out of business and look like you're putting a nail in the coffin. So anyway, I'm just monitoring to see what's going on here so we can figure out how we're going to operate.
Can you explain a little bit more about why this is putting you out of business?
Well, part of the reason used to be years ago, you didn't have to be a lawyer or accountant. Now you got to have that, not counting, you got to be a environmentalist trying to counter what you guys are bringing down the line here. We got to hire people that there's no money now. This money that must be some money coming from somewhere. FEMA's involved in it. Is this 19.5 billion that the Inflation Reduction Act? Is this where this money is coming from? Can you guys answer that for me?
No, I don't believe it is. I think it's coming from FEMA's. It's coming from FEMA's post-disaster mitigation budget.
Well, maybe you can find out because, you know, they've got, when you start talking about federal government, that money, I mean, it isn't free money, it's taxpayers' money. All these grants and all these grants, people don't realize that's taxpayer money that somebody's got a grant for. And I'm just kind of curious if it was supposed to be $19.5 billion coming out of the Inflation Reduction Act. Now, I'm just asking if that's where FEMA's getting part of their money to finance it, because you're creating more work for these different departments and you know they aren't going to do it for nothing. So somebody's got to be financing this.
This project was funded through the Hazard Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. And that's a regular FEMA program. So I don't believe it has anything to do with the money that you're referring to.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to be listening, just seeing what we got to do to be aware of what's going down the pike here, because it's kind of getting ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ariel Nelson, next question. No, Ariel, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. I'm Ariel Nelson with the League of Oregon Cities, and I apologize, I didn't have this on my calendar, so I joined late. I didn't realize when it was starting. I just wanted to flag for the League of Oregon Cities, and I'm not seeing my Association of Oregon Counties counterparts on. I don't know if they were on earlier, but this is a really challenging time of year for us to participate in something of this magnitude due to legislative session. And so I don't know if that was taken into account at all, or if it could be accommodated in some way, just because our schedules are so unpredictable, unfortunately, with the legislative session right now. This is a really important conversation that we'd like to support. And I'm also wondering if maybe an alternative would be to have some city and county representatives in our place, since AOC and LOC staff are so busy with session.
So, good point. We are too. And AOC was also invited. I don't know why they're not here, but I assume that may have something to do with the legislative session. I'm happy to invite some local government representatives, and if LOC and AOC would like to nominate some folks to come in their place when they can't make it, that would be great too. So we can talk about that further offline if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
And also, we are always open. The phone lines are open. You have a moment and want to comment on any of the materials that we share with you outside of the meetings, please call or email.
Right, and further, this meeting is being recorded, and we'll be posting it, and so you'll be able to watch it later in its entirety.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's just going to be really difficult for us to participate depending on the week, but maybe we can work something out to get some representation, because I really think it's going to be important to have cities and counties feel like we can engage. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Well, hearing none, let me thank you all for spending your morning with us, and on a short notice too. We really appreciate it. We are going to send you out, as I said, a raft of doodle polls so that we can get some more meetings scheduled, at least for the next couple of months. And we look forward to working with you, and I appreciate how I don't want to say talkative, how engaged you've been this morning. Thank you. We appreciate the conversation, and I think we're going to continue like this without the chat on, so that we can all talk together. And hopefully it will get more and more like an open meeting as we move forward and get to know each other. So again, thank you, and we can give you back 25 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marion. Thanks everybody else for your assistance.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.